Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Our top story: a North Carolina businessman pleads guilty for trying to export sensitive tech to China. That gear designed to help missiles fly better. More on how he was caught. President Trump following through on his planned tariffs for Mexico, Canada, and China, plus his unwavering calls for a quick end to the Ukraine war. The Chinese regime reportedly warning its top AI experts not to travel abroad. That's to keep the U.S. from learning about its tech advances, despite Beijing's long history of stealing Western know-how. And China State Council urging local authorities to safeguard against infectious diseases outbreaks, plus a warning about human cases of bird flu inside the country.
I'm greatly concerned now that bird flu could cause serious human disease, fatalities.
Before we dive into today's top story, we'd like to share an important update. You can now catch China in Focus on Ganjing World every Tuesday instead of YouTube. We'll publish the link in the description box down below at that time, or you can search China in Focus at ganjingworld.com. A guilty plea in North Carolina, a businessman in the state charged with trying to export sensitive technology to China without a license. His name is David Bomerwald. The Justice Department said Bomerwald tried to export 100 accelerometers to China without applying for a license. Accelerometers are crucial for flight control and navigation systems. The technology can help missiles fly better and measure the precise effect munitions have on structures. The U.S. requires businesses to obtain a license in order to export this technology to China. The Justice Department said Bomerwald bought 100 accelerometers from a company based in the U.S. He told the company the purchase was for an end user in Missouri. He later shipped the accelerometers through FedEx. His package was worth almost $20,000, but he listed the value at merely $100. An agent of the Commerce Department later detained the package. He could face 20 years behind bars when sentenced. The U.S. has long been combating technology flow to China, a flow that benefits the Chinese military. A big part of that is semiconductors. Beijing recently lashed out after reports said that the Trump administration plans to further tighten semiconductor controls on China. It came after Bloomberg reported that U.S. officials recently met with their Japanese and Dutch counterparts. The talk focused on restricting engineers at tech companies Tokyo Electron and ASML from maintaining semiconductor equipment in China. These two companies are among the world's largest semiconductor equipment manufacturers. Without their equipment, producing advanced semiconductors would be extremely difficult. ASML is the only company in the world that makes extreme ultraviolet lithography machines, the machines critical to the high-end chip-making process. Tokyo Electron is also a key player in the industry. The report also noted that some Trump officials aim to limit the types of NVIDIA chips that can be exported to China without a license. NVIDIA's AI chips are in high demand and are sought after by the Chinese military. President Trump isn't wavering in his push for a quick end to the Ukraine war. He's also following through on his promise to ramp up tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China starting Tuesday. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao has the latest.
So today's announcement was about this $100 billion investment in U.S. chip making from the Taiwanese company called TSMC, which is the world's biggest chip maker. Now, another big topic for people's attention is tariffs that President Trump is set to impose on both Mexico, Canada, as well as China starting tomorrow. President Trump today doubled down on it, saying that he's not going to change his mind or give these countries more room to avoid these tariffs, saying that they will go into effect starting Tuesday, which is tomorrow. And he also asked that that's because these countries have failed to stop the flow of fentanyl into the U.S., in particular China. He says is imposing an additional 10% of tariffs to China on the foundation of already an existing 10% that he announced earlier in the second term. Here's what he said about it. Watch.
It's going to be very costly for people to take advantage of this country. They can't come in and steal our money and steal our jobs and take our factories and take our businesses and expect not to be punished. And they're being punished by tariffs.
And now the White House told us that it's already signed the 20% tariffs on China. President Trump has already penned it, adding that is for, of course, addressing their failure of preventing fentanyl from coming into the U.S. And now the U.S. is also urging both Mexico and Canada to match the U.S.'s tariffs on China. Meanwhile, on another topic surrounding today's event, which is the announcement by this Taiwanese chipmaker TSMC, and that's an $100 billion investment over the next 4 years in U.S.-based chip manufacturing. And President Trump says that the investment is not just a good business deal, but also is beneficial for U.S. national security, given the importance of chips in so many industries. He also asked that with this latest transaction, as well as the more stuff that the administration is trying to do, the U.S. will have around 40% a share of the chips market going forward. And also was asked about what impact this deal will have on potentially the U.S. Protection of its own chip manufacturing if China decides to invade Taiwan. Here's what he said. Watch.
This would certainly, I can't say minimize. That would be a catastrophic event, obviously. But it will at least give us a position where we have, in this very, very important business, we would have a very big part of it in the United States. So it would have a big impact if something should happen with Taiwan.
Beijing is reportedly doubling down on blocking the U.S. from learning about its advances in artificial intelligence. That's despite the regime's long-time efforts to steal American intellectual property. Here's more.
Chinese authorities are reportedly instructing the country's top AI entrepreneurs and researchers to avoid travel to the U.S. That's according to a report from the Wall Street Journal, citing people familiar with the matter. Chinese authorities say they're concerned that Chinese AI experts could spill the beans on the country's tech advancements when traveling abroad, or that they could be arrested while in the U.S. and used as bargaining chips in U.S.-China negotiations. In 2018, Canada arrested tech giant Huawei's CFO Meng Wanzhou at the request of the U.S. Washington accused Meng of violating U.S. sanctions on Iran and wanted to extradite her. Back to Chinese authorities' new instructions. The report said there is no outright ban on U.S. travel, but tech executives are discouraged from going abroad. Those who do choose to travel have to report their plans before leaving. And after returning, they must brief Chinese authorities on what they did and who they met with while overseas. The report comes after a recent Chinese AI advancement shocked the West. Chinese AI chatbot DeepSeek's launch caused a $1 trillion drop in the U.S. stock market. DeepSeek claims that it developed its flagship chatbot for a fraction of the cost of its American rivals. President Trump said DeepSeek's rise should be a wake-up call to the U.S. tech industry. Zooming out, the U.S. and China are locked in a global AI race. Beijing aims to outcompete Washington in artificial intelligence in 5 years. Just like nuclear weapons in the 60s, artificial intelligence is critical to the global battle for dominance. Whoever takes the lead in AI will seize a major advantage on future battlefields. Right now, the U.S. leads the globe in artificial intelligence. But experts warn China is catching up in some areas. A report from Harvard says China has overtaken the U.S. in some kinds of AI technology, from facial recognition to drones and 5G. Beijing's new instructions to stay tight-lipped on China's AI advancements come in contrast to its decades of stealing U.S. intellectual property. That's through both acquiring American companies and luring American talent to China. Over the past decade, Beijing has been systematically recruiting talent to bring U.S. know-how back to China. They do it through a project called the 1,000 Talents Program. Under it, the regime tempts top scholars to hand over their knowledge to China with lucrative offers. What's more, it doesn't always ask those scientists to go to China. They're often allowed to stay in their positions overseas, as long as they hand over the expertise or patents that the regime wants. Based on a report from the U.S. Trade Representative's Office, China's theft of U.S. IP has cost America between $200 billion to $600 billion every year. Washington has tried to stem the technology flow to China, partly through tightening export controls of semiconductors to the communist country. These microchips power technologies, including AI, which are sought after by the Chinese military.
Also on the tech front, Chinese robotic companies are mass-producing humanoid robots. That's as demand to replace traditional security guards at car dealerships is on the rise. Zooming in on one Shanghai company, the tech maker usually produces a range of robots from toys to those used in industrial settings. But this year, the founder of the company says orders for humanoid robots are rising through the ranks, noting his company has received over 1,000 orders for them already this year. Industry experts say AI's development is primed to speed up the robotics industry. Major cities in China, including Beijing and Shanghai, have a warning for their citizens. Cases of bird flu infecting humans are on the rise. Despite that message, the Chinese CDC still failed to give details on the emerging public health concern. Here's a closer look at what Beijing Daily, a newspaper owned by the Chinese state, is saying. Thursday, the paper posted a notice from China's State Council. It acknowledged an avian influenza and the monkeypox virus as emerging diseases affecting humans. It noted, quote, avian influenza in humans remains sporadic and at low levels. The notice also calls on local authorities across the country to, quote, deploy in advance the prevention and control of spring epidemics. What's more, the Chinese CDC's health risk alert for January and February indicated that avian influenza A has been detected in humans. But both sources failed to mention details, such as where the cases were found. The latest report didn't even reveal the specific strain of bird flu that was found. It only labeled the infections as caused by, quote, other strains. The United States has long criticized Beijing for covering up details about public health, especially in regards to the COVID-19 pandemic. Moving to Shanghai, a Chinese internet user shared a hospital notice on Chinese social media 2 weeks ago. The notice indicated that patients need to notify their health providers if they had direct contact with poultry within 10 days of falling ill. Shanghai authorities recently banned the trading of all live poultry, in effect for the next 3 years. That's to, quote, prevent public health risks. But little information was given beyond that. We'll keep you updated on what's happening with public health inside China as the situation develops. Is the U.S. at risk of getting swept up in another pandemic? Eyewitness reports from China say a recent wave of respiratory infections has overloaded hospitals and crematoria in the country. NTD's Jack Bradley spoke to Dr. Peter McCullough for Insight. He's the Chief Scientific Officer of the Wellness Company.
Dr. Peter McCullough, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you.
Now, your colleague at the McCullough Foundation, Nicholas Holscher, told me that you guys have found that the bird flu outbreak may have come from a lab doing gain-of-function research. It's being widely recognized now that the COVID-19 pandemic came from doing the same kind of research at a lab in Wuhan. Can you elaborate on the bird flu?
The bird flu looks like it came out of serial passage research, which is a different form of gain-of-function research, and particularly trying to get it to spread in mallard ducks and study the receptors in the gullet of the mallard duck.
Now, over in China, we're hearing reports that the bird flu is much worse over there than what they're reporting. And we also know that another strain of COVID has come out, although less serious. Is it possible that we'll get into another pandemic?
I think it is possible. Whether it's bird flu or the new Merkava virus out of Wuhan, we're having a particularly more difficult flu season this year. And it's my clinical observation that I think the COVID-19 pandemic has weakened population immunity all over the world.
That's the exact opposite than what we thought was going to happen with herd immunity.
Right. What I mean, weakened immunity to other illnesses like influenza, a new viral infection, bird flu. And so I think we have to be on our guard. The best advice is to use twice daily nasal sprays and gargles. The iodine-based ones or xylitol-based products are great to prevent these illnesses.
And what needs to happen on the policy level to prevent this?
I think we need to shut down these gain-of-function research labs. They need to be tightly regulated. We clearly need much more oversight of what's going on in these university labs, these other virology labs around the world. We need coordination. Instead of facilitating this, I think we need tight restrictions. Almost certainly the next pandemic will come out of a lab.
And doing gain of function research, is this a new kind of research, and why? It seems that there's more problems with it than there are benefits. Why has it come about now?
It's highly profitable. This what's called dual purpose pathogens of pandemic potential research. It's so rich with money for future diagnostics, therapeutics, and vaccines. The universities are getting into it, richly funded by governments, by foundations, pharmaceutical companies. I think it's time to step in and curb this. The public is at risk.
Dr. Peter McCullough, thank you very much for your insights here today.
Thank you.
New scrutiny for Chinese-owned app TikTok in the UK. It ties back to the platform's handling of children's privacy. NTD's Joy Chu has the story.
The UK's privacy watchdog opened an investigation on Monday. Two American companies, Reddit and Imgur, are also on its radar. TikTok is owned by the Chinese company ByteDance. The watchdog said it is probing how it uses teenagers' personal data to suggest content in their feed. The agency says there are growing concerns over the use of data from children's online activity to make recommendations, which could expose them to inappropriate or harmful content. In 2023, the UK agency fined TikTok $16 million for violating data protection laws by using the personal data of children under 13 without parental approval. Joy Cho, NTD News.
Coming up, the space race between the United States and China is on. A new update from NASA. A moon lander now set to touch down in a moon region largely untouched throughout human history. American aircraft carrier the USS Carl Vinson makes a port call in South Korea, flexing its muscles against the North. And U.S. forces in Asia participate in an annual drill in Thailand alongside forces from the country as well as South Korea and Singapore. Welcome back to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. An update on the space race as China looks to expand its ambitions and the U.S. works to keep its edge. On the U.S. side, NASA's moon program released new details on its latest lander, which is set to touch down near the moon's south pole. That region of Earth's closest neighbor has remained largely uncharted throughout human history. Here are the details.
These lunar views were captured by Firefly Aerospace's Blue Ghost spacecraft. Set to touch down on Sunday, it's one of two landers currently in transit to the moon's surface. Their goal is to deliver science and technology from NASA as part of the space agency's $2.6 billion Commercial Lunar Payload Services initiative. NASA scientist Ryan Watkins says the program aims to bring about more frequent missions to the moon.
We're really trying to enable the sustainable lunar economy, really build these companies up to be able to do these types of missions, with NASA as just one of many customers. And so, by partnering with these companies, we're able to look towards doing, up to 2 missions per year.
On Wednesday, Intuitive Machines launched its 6-legged moon lander Athena atop a SpaceX rocket. It's set to land around March 6th near the moon's south pole, where it will be drilling down and measuring the amount of water present.
This is where we're going to be sending humans as part of Artemis, and we want to understand the resources that are available to us down there as we work towards longer duration human exploration.
Watkins says the ultimate goal, though, is to reach beyond Earth's satellite.
So a lot of the technologies that we're sending to the lunar surface, we're learning how to use these, and then we ultimately want to use them as we go forward to Mars. So that is the ultimate goal, is humans on Moon and then Mars.
Now we turn to the Indo-Pacific region for a show of force against North Korea. American aircraft carrier the USS Carl Vinson made a port call in Busan, South Korea on Monday.
The South Korean Navy said the visit is part of the United States' ironclad commitment to Seoul's defense. USS Carl Vinson is the first U.S. aircraft carrier to dock at a South Korean port since President Trump's second term began. The arrival of the aircraft carrier comes after North Korean leader Kim Jong-un reportedly supervised the test launch of a strategic cruise missiles last month. It marks the first time an American aircraft carrier has called at the country since June.
American forces are on a beach in Thailand for a round of military drills. The U.S. troops are joining forces from Thailand, South Korea, and Singapore in an effort to help secure regional stability.
The exercises opened with an airstrike, followed by an amphibious landing and rehearsed clashes between defending and attacking forces.
We're learning different techniques and tactics and procedures on how to work not only amphibious, but also in some of the unique environments that are offered here in Thailand, specifically the jungle.
This year marks the 44th edition of Cobra Gold, which is a multinational military exercise launched in 1982. Over 8,000 troops from 30 countries are participating in the drills. The exercise started on February 24th, and it's scheduled to end on Friday.
A defense deal between the U.S. and a major ally in Asia will stay in place, at least for another 4 years. The Philippine ambassador says existing defense agreements between the Philippines and the United States will remain intact during President Trump's second term. Let's dive in.
Ambassador Romualdo also said the Philippine president is ready to speak with President Trump. He said a meeting could take place in the spring. The United States and the Philippines are close defense allies. U.S. troops rotate in and out of the Philippines regularly, and dozens of joint exercises are held each year. The U.S. is also releasing hundreds of millions of dollars to modernize the Philippine military. Philippine forces have faced multiple incidents of provocation from the Chinese regime in the South China Sea. Secretary of State Marco Rubio met the Philippine Foreign Secretary last month, where he also confirmed the country's alliance.
And before you go, a quick announcement. President Donald Trump will address Congress for the first time during his second term tomorrow, March 4th. Join us for NTD's special coverage at 7 p.m. Eastern for on-the-ground coverage, analysis, and more on the president's vision for the country.
March 4th, President Donald Trump delivers his first address to Congress. What's his vision for America's future? How will his policies shape the nation?
From this moment on, America's decline is over.
We'll take you to the heart of it with live, in-depth coverage, expert breakdowns, and on-the-ground reports. Live March 4th, 7 to 11 p.m. Eastern. The vision, the challenge, the future. Only on NTD.
That's all for today's China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. If you have any feedback on the show or have something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at chinainfocus@ntd.com. We'd love to hear from you. For on-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.